So good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's session on the Azure webinar series. Our topic for today is accelerating your analytics solution with Azure. In the session today, we'll go through some of the fundamentals of a modern data platform and how this can be extended to your advanced analytics projects. So before I get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. This is a 30-minute presentation with a Q&A session at the end. Please feel free to post questions you have in the chat during the presentation. We'll answer them during the Q&A session. Again, just want to welcome those that are attending our session for the first time, and also the return joiners. It's great to have everyone here today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mik Panchal. I've been at Altis for over 12 years. During this period, I've delivered solutions across various industries using different technologies. For the past few years, I've focused my interest on the Azure technology stack. We also have Manan Patel, who will be walking us through each of the components that make up the framework. Manan has been with Altis for 3 years and has been involved with a number of our Azure implementations. So to kick this off, here's today's agenda. For those that are new to Altis, I'll do a brief introduction and then dive into why we're here. Manan will then talk us through the Altis Azure framework and discuss what's in the pipeline. We'll finish off with a Q&A session. So a little bit about Altis. Altis is one of the largest vendor-independent data and analytics consultancy in Australia and New Zealand. We've been enabling our partners to deliver tangible business outcomes across many industries using the latest tools and technologies over 20 years. Our ethos, connecting with courage, heart, and insight, CCHI, is what differentiates us from our competitors. This enables us to connect with our partners and work with them to deliver tangible business outcomes. CCHI is one of the reasons why I've been at Altis for over 12 years. We've also been voted BRW's top 10 best places to work for the past 10 years running, which is something I'm really proud of. So let's get into why we're here. Should we invest more time getting data into a modern data platform or spend more time analyzing the data and creating insights for the business? We looked at answering this question in our recent blog, which you can find on our website. We found that a big portion of any modern data platform involved getting the data in the right place and right format before it can be transformed for analytics. Throughout our Azure projects, our team had implemented some form of framework to automate data integration. This enabled the team to speed up the extract, load, and transform process so that information is available for reporting and analysis. As a result of this, we saw an opportunity to gather our collective experience across different projects and establish the Altis Azure framework. The framework consists of 3 components: Azure Data Factory, which is used to automate and orchestrate data integration. The second component is CICD. This allows for a continuous integration of code and allows the team to automate deployment to different environments. Last but not least is reconciliation. This is used to automate testing and provide reconciliation capabilities to the business. So I'll now pass on to Manan, who will expand in all of this.
Yeah, thank you, Mick. I'm going to switch over to my screen now.
Cool, thank you.
Can you see the diagram and hear me correctly?
Yeah, all good.
All right. No. Thank you for the introduction, Mick, and thank you for everyone joining us today. Hope everyone's been keeping well. As Mick mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Altis framework that we have developed in the Azure stack. Please feel free to post any questions in the chat. Mick will be monitoring those as we go through, and he will stop me if there's a question that should be answered live. Otherwise, we might come back to it at the end. To start with, I want to talk about this diagram, which shows what a modern data platform can look like. Starting on the left-hand side, we've got the various data sources. These could be on-premise or cloud-based, and they could be in various formats, such as APIs, databases, flat files, or unstructured data, such as JSON. Now, in a traditional data platform, we would be ingesting these data sources into a data warehousing service, such as the Azure SQL database or any other tool. And we'd be using some sort of ingestion tool to do this, such as Data Factory, as in this diagram. We may also load this data into a blob storage or equivalent. Using the traditional methods of developing this process, it can take quite a while to develop something like this, and it can quickly become quite complex, depending on the number of objects that need to be loaded from the various source systems. So that's really where our framework comes in, and I'll be explaining or elaborating on that in the next few slides. So once ingested, the data needs to be transformed to fit the business logic. And then it needs to be presented to the business. Now, traditionally, we would do this in a dimensional model in a data warehouse, or we would model the data in Azure Analysis Services or some similar tools. And then the business would be able to consume these data sets through visualization tools such as Excel, Power BI, or other tools that are similar. We have built a framework that encompasses this process from start to finish. And in addition to this component of loading the data into the staging and presentation layers, we've added two extra components on top. The first one is continuous integration and continuous deployments. So basically, this means establishing the governance and processes behind maintaining a common code base for the platform, as well as deploying it into the various environments that you have running in your setup. I'll elaborate on the CICD part of the framework in the next few slides. The reconciliation is the third part of the framework. So we apply a set of checks that confirm that the business logic applied is complete and accurate. And this is stored in the SQL databases, which is used to orchestrate and automate these checks. And new checks are added in as we develop this platform. So Power BI can also be used to visualize this reconciliation checks, which adds a bit of visibility into the process about how the business logic is applied and how we're proving that it's correct. So moving on to some of the more details about how the framework works. We're going to talk about this in terms of each component that makes up the overarching framework. So if we break it down, we have the ADF and SQL database component, which is the metadata-driven ETL process. Now, when we say it's metadata-driven, we mean that it uses a standard set of information about each source system and the objects that need to be loaded to ingest the data into the platform. This allows you to ingest the data faster using a controlled and consistent method. What we have created is a set of several ingestion patterns that you can use to load data from various source system types that we touched on in the earlier slide. These could be SQL databases, flat files, or unstructured data. The speed of ingestion is what allows you to focus the majority of the effort into analyzing, profiling, and modeling the data. So one row of metadata can mean that you can load data from a new source object and the data will be available in the staging layer, which in turn allows developers and data scientists to perform their analysis and modeling tasks immediately. The framework also streamlines the auditing and restartability of the ETL or ELT process, as these advanced features are already implemented in the ingestion patterns. The CICD component is split into the continuous integration and continuous deployment sections. Continuous integration is the part that establishes the governance and processes of maintaining the centralized code base. Continuous deployment is the simplification of the deployment of the solution from the development environment into testing and production environments. The framework uses Azure DevOps and Git to continuously integrate and continuously deploy this framework into the several environments that you have. What this allows you to do is allow multiple teams to collaborate in development to consistently deliver the value of the framework and the platform that you're developing. The reconciliation component includes a set of patterns that can be used to check the accuracy and completeness of the data presented to the business. So we'll talk a bit about what it actually checks in the next slide. But what the reconciliation does is it increases the trust in the business that the business has of the data that you're presenting, and therefore the insights that are drawn from the platform. We've got here the key features that we've already touched on briefly, but these are the ones that are listed against each component. The ADF side of things, we have the metadata-driven ETL, which simplifies the process using a standard integration pattern. We capture the history of the changes that occur in the data in the source system, which allows us to recreate history for a point-in-time analysis. The extracts can be run in parallel, so multiple tables from each source system can be ingested simultaneously. As mentioned, the auditing is integrated into the ingestion patterns, so you're allowed full traceability of each record from the staging area through to the presentation area. We can implement source filters to perform incremental loads. So that could be delta loads or window loads. If the process fails, once the error is resolved, we can restart the process and it will continue at the point of failure. So it means that if we're loading 15 tables for a source system, and if the process fails in the 6th table, once the error is resolved, the process can be restarted and it will start at the 6th table and will not reprocess the first 5. CICD side, we have the continuous integration, which we've talked about, which is the governance of the common code base. The continuous deployment, which simplifies the deployments and therefore increases the speed of testing and the delivery. We have some pre-deployment checks that we can implement in Azure DevOps. And we have pre-deployment approvals that can be configured to a team, a group, or a specific individual. We can customize the CICD component to suit your environments. So if you have any amount of non-production and production environments, we can adapt the framework to suit that setup. We have branching, which allows multiple teams to collaborate simultaneously without breaking the continuous integration, as each team is linked to the centralized code base. The reconciliation framework, or component of the framework, confirms that the business logic is applied correctly, which is potentially the most important part of the ETL process. It also ensures that the business keys are unique in the presented data. It counts the null values and missing records to ensure data completeness. And we have a default value check to make sure that the correct value is assigned in the right places. We also track the size of the database as we move through, as we ingest more and more data to make sure that the size of the database is consistently correct and that we're not ingesting more data than needs to be. We then have the benefits that this framework gives you. So we can customize and configure the framework to suit your requirements. We can repeat and scale the framework and the platform as needed. So as more data sources come through and need to be ingested, the framework can be adapted to suit those new data platforms. This means that the data is available in the modern data platform sooner, allowing more time for profiling and modeling, which in turn feeds into your data science and advanced analytics tasks. There is a lower effort required to develop a solution in this framework, and the reduced complexity of the overall solution, paired with the reduced number of objects in ADF and SQL, means that there is a minimum setup time, and it makes it easier to maintain the entire solution. Now, all of these benefits together tie into the speed to market of the modern data platform. So what does this framework actually give you? Having developed, implemented, and supported this framework at various client sites, we can safely say that this framework reduces the overall development effort of ingesting data by more than 50%. We have been able to implement this framework to focus focus the effort on providing the right dimensional model for self-service and thus delivering the business insights with increased agility. So what are the next steps for this framework? We're going to be extending the framework to accommodate for different data sources. So we're going to be adding more ingestion patterns that allow us to easily integrate different data sources of different types into the data platform. We're going to be taking a look at some of the Azure services that we haven't talked about in this framework, so such as Azure Data Lake, Azure Databricks, and Azure Synapse. And due to the importance we place on establishing a set of standards for securing your environment, we believe that the security considerations deserves its own webinar, so please stay tuned for that. To summarize what we have presented today, we talked a bit about Altis as a company and the fact that we connect with courage, heart, and insight. And hopefully we've been able to demonstrate that we implement this in all of our frameworks and our projects as we develop them. We highlighted that the reason we developed this framework is because we think more time should be spent on delivering the value to the business. We explained the framework, what it is, what the key features are, and how they can benefit you. We discussed the return of investment in the framework, which is to reduce the time spent on ingesting the data and focus your efforts on delivering the value. Before we move on to Q&A, I'd like to give you all a few calls to action. We encourage you to connect with us and our team to talk about how we can help you with your modern data platform journey. We are happy to work with you to determine the readiness of your organization. We can also organize a more technical demonstration of the components of the framework. I'd like to highlight the special offer for the people attending this webinar. If you contact us before the 20th of June, you can get 20% off 20 consulting days, where we will implement a proof of concept of the framework using 10 to 15 objects of your data source. Please also join our mailing list and attend our future webinars. I know that we have some very interesting topics coming up. I'm going to leave this slide up as we move on to the Q&A section.
Thanks, Manan. Thanks for the presentation. Got a question here from Greg. The question is, how do you handle test data, example, sample master data or sample transactional data in the CICD environment? The question is keeping the test and production separate.
Did you want to answer that one, Mik, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. I can give it a go. So I think the test data you're referring to and the master data referring to is the data that's stored inside the database itself. Right now, the CI/CD process doesn't automate the sample or the reference data, we call it, that's in the database. What you have to do is manually transfer that data between environments. What it does automate is the DDL. So if you have new tables or new procedures or views in the database, we can automate the migration of that into the different environments. So that's where the continuous integration and the continuous deployment comes in place. We also have another, I'll just share my screen so you can see the questions coming through as well. So the other question is, what tools do you use for CI/CD? So as Manan mentioned before, we're using Azure DevOps and Git. So Git is our main repository to store our version, source control, where we store the Azure pipelines, and we're also storing the SQL Server code.
Mik, we can't see the questions come up. I think you're sharing the wrong screen.
Oh, sorry. I'll just stop the share, and sorry about that. Maybe Manan, do you want to go back to your presentation, and then I'll just talk through the questions that we have. I think we don't seem to be having any more questions.
We have one in the Q&A section. So we have one that says, how does your framework handle masking of data in non-prod environments? To answer that one, we would actually say in the non-prod environments, whenever we are dealing with sensitive data, we encourage our clients not to put the sensitive data in non-prod. So it should always be dummy data or test data.
Also, I think we encourage the client to master data in the database itself. So there are things that we can put in place in the test and the development environment, which masters data when it comes in. But it's something that we definitely do need to put more effort into. So we'll definitely look into that in the future.
If somebody wants to clarify some points that we've discussed today instead of asking a question, that's fine as well. Please feel free to shoot those through.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all. I don't think we have any more questions. So I think
we have one more. We have one more.
Yeah, sure.
What tools and technologies are used for the reconciliation? So we spoke about this a little bit, but I'll go into more detail. We're using SQL database to do the reconciliation process. So the way it works is that we have a set of stored procedures in the database that are executed as part of the ETL load, which runs through each of the checks that you have developed as part of your unit tests, as well as a set of standardized tests that we apply to every object in the presentation layer. So what it would do is it run the process of loading the data through this process and through the platform, sorry, and then it'll run those stored procedures and log the result of those checks into the database, which can then be used to monitor the success or failure of those checks, and then you can use Power BI to visualize these results.
Yeah, so the idea here really is to capture the unit tests as you develop. So every time a new feature has been added to the data warehouse or the modern data platform, we capture those test cases and add it to the framework. Yeah, so the answer to what we're using, T-SQL or other unit testing framework, it is SQL based, it's stored procedures for now. However, the pattern can be customized for any other database or any other tool that we have. Something just to talk more about the testing framework. It's not, because the data warehouse doesn't act traditionally like a software development. It's not that straightforward to automate the test cases, and as a result, what we're automating is the testing of the test cases that we come up with during the development. Cool, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions from anyone? We'll be sending out a follow-up email with our contact details to all of the attendees. So you'll be able to contact us through those.
Yeah, alternatively, you can contact us via the connect@altis.com.au. That's correct. Andy's the person. Yeah, so just to answer that question, we have regional managers in each of our regions, so Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, and New Zealand. who are more than happy to you know, help you with any of the questions that you have. We also have a office in London. Yeah, I think that's about it, Manan. I don't seem to have any more questions.
All right. Well, thank you everyone once again for joining us today.
And please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you. We'll stop the session now.
Thanks, everyone.